Hi, I'm Hummy from Hummy's World, and I would like to ask you, why is gamut important to you? I recently have learned about gamut, and it used to not be important to me because I did not know what it was, and I have decided that it is important to me, and I want to share with you why it's important. I want to look at it with you in both Photoshop and Photoshop Elements, and show you how you can fix it. I have here a kit, and I found particularly this element is out of Gamut. This is a digital scrapbooking kit. Gamut is important for both digital scrapbooking designers as well as those editing photos, especially professional photographers. And going to be combining both of those hobbies or businesses into this lesson. I have here, we're going to start with photography first. I have here a photo that came straight out of my camera. Now, being as one who loves to play in Photoshop and Photoshop Elements, I love to take my images and do this with them. I call this a POW or a wow photo. And I post these on the internet and people go wow, and I'm sure you have had that phenomenon before also, where you've seen other photos on the web and you've went wow. Well, let me tell you that these photos are actually a bit deceiving. Am I going to still create them and share them? Probably so, just because it's fun. But if I'm a professional photographer, I am not going to be probably sharing photos like this that can be downloaded and printed. I'm not going to be sharing JPEGs like this with my clients if I'm a professional photographer. And the reason being is that this is out of gamut. What out of gamut means is that it's out of the range of colors that your printer can print. Now, most home computers print in RGB, and most professional printers print in CMYK color profile. So if we are working in RGB mode all the time, you would think that our images would be just fine and not be out of gamut. This is not so. They can get out of that range that our printers can print. I actually went and put both of these images, this is the first one and this is the second one, in one file, and I printed it, and I can tell you that when I printed it, it looks very similar. There's a slight difference, but my printer did change the colors. So if you are a digital scrapbooking designer, why gamut is important for you is that you want your customers to get the same results coming out of their printer as what they see on their screen. A common question that I've always had in digital scrapbooking is, why is it printing different than it is seen on my screen? Well, most customers, including myself, have not been educated about gamut. And so the common answer, and the answer I've always given, which I'm going to be changing as of today, the common answer is your monitor is not calibrated. Well, this is true. I have, and this is why I believe in monitor calibration, I have calibrated my monitor and fixed my problems with images not printing the same as what I've seen on the screen. But there's a second factor, and that's in gamut. It also might not be printing the same because the colors you're using in Photoshop or Photoshop Elements are out of gamut, and so it's substituting colors. And so we're going to look at this a little bit further in the program. And we want our customers to easily have success and not wonder why things are different. So we want these things to be in gamut or as close to gamut as possible. If you're a little bit out of a gamut, that might be okay because the customer's eye might not notice that difference when it prints. But to be a lot out of gamut is a huge problem. And so I want to show you where in Photoshop I have CS4. Of course, they all work similarly in these aspects. If you go to Edit and then Color Settings, I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and start with your monitor color. And my RGB is set to a color profile from my Spider version 2 that I own, and I have other tutorials about that. That is the color calibration that I was previously talking about. And you're going to see here the RGB and the CMYK. This is the first time you're going to be seeing these. Another thing that you need to set to check the gamut is your gamut warning color. And so I'm going to click on Edit It, and then it's kind of off your screen, but I'm in Preferences and then Transparency and Gamut. And in here you're going to see this is pink right now. It was, I think, initially gray, but you can pick any color here as your gamut warning. Obviously, if I'm checking a photo that's all pink, I'm not going to want my warning to be pink, and you're going to see that here in a bit. But generally, pink is a good color because that's a color that's going to stand out, one that's not normally in a lot of photos. And so just pick any color in here that's going to stand out and click OK. I'm going to go back and I'm going to open up this combined image. And here are the two photos. And if I also go to View and Proof Setup, I want this to be set on Working CMYK because we want to know when it's out of gamut for CMYK. The default in Photoshop has, I believe, nothing checked, and so your gamut warning, which is just here below, is going to be grayed out if you do not have that checked. So now I'm just going to click here on gamut warning, or I could press Shift Control Y, and you're going to see that my original photo is not too much out of gamut. You can see there's a few spots on it, and that probably would be okay to leave it there. But you're going to see this edited one is got pink all over it. And so it is definitely out of gamut. Now I'm going to turn this warning off and show you another way to check as to whether or not this is out of gamut in Photoshop. I can click on the color picker, and I am going to go out here and choose a color in my photo, and this one happens to be in gamut, so I'm going to click again. There we go. I have one that is out of gamut. This particular color shows up with this warning. If you hover over it, it says click what's it say? Come on, hover. Click to select in gamut color, and above this you're going to see a little exclamation point. That's telling me that this color, this particular color in this image, is not going to print on the printer. But if I click right on this box, it selects the closest color that is in gamut. And you see here there is still another warning box underneath. What is this box? It says click to select web safe color. Now, a web safe color is different than being out of gamut. They have picked 256 colors that display about the same on whatever monitor you happen to be using. So for those that make designs for on the web, if they stick with just those colors, they can be certain that they display about the same on every monitor, no matter how they're calibrated. So if I wanted to do a web safe color and find it, I'd click here and it'd go to the nearest one for that. That is how, let's see, I think the grass, as you can see, was out of gamut, and I can click this to find the color that is closest in gamut, or click this to find a web safe color. Now I'm going to tell you that most of the time the colors that are out of gamut are your bright and your highly saturated colors. And to look on here, your bright and your highly saturated colors are up here on your color picker, provided you have the hue selected, not the saturation or brightness, but the hue. You're going to see them up here in this area, the bright and highly saturated colors. But to show you that this is true, I'm going to click Control U on my keyboard to bring up the hue and saturation sliders. Let's go ahead and put that gamut warning back on so we can see all that pink, and then go ahead and move the saturation slider down. And as I do, you're going to see that many of those colors, well, if I go down far enough, they all disappear. But as I move up, they all reappear. And if I keep going, you're going to see more warning. And in fact, this one up here begins to be out of gamut more and more and more too, the higher up we go. Also, lightening it. Boy, I just lightened it just a tad, and that took out all of that gamut problem. So lightening it, not all, I see some down here in the grass, but lightening it really also took care of that gamut problem. But you're going to see that the two images are still different, even though I have fixed the gamut problem. So there are other ways of fixing the gamut problem. Another one that is recommended is to get your sponge tool, and your sponge tool basically saturates or desaturates the image. And if you move your flow way down, and what size brush have I got going on here? And well, I can't seem to get, I'm not going to play with it. Oh, there it goes. And then you see I'm just desaturating just the areas. I mean, if I wanted to zoom in, this has got too much. But if I just had one small area of my photo that needed to be desaturated and not the whole image, I could use this tool to go in and just desaturate those areas of the photo. Like in the grass, I might not want to do them all. I would just hit it with this sponge tool until those disappeared. Just those areas of grass that were out of gamut. And that is another way that you can fix out of gamut, especially if you just have a few small areas. So you see I'm slowly fixing the out of gamut that way. Another way that you can fix out of gamut, and I'm going to show you these in Photoshop Elements also, is just to change your color profile. So if I go to Edit, Convert Color Profile, and you see already it's done it. In the working CMYK, and all of my gamut warning is gone, just like that. You can see there are still differences between the two photos. So the suggestion is that you initially work in the regular RGB mode, and then right before you save you can convert it to the CMYK and get rid of all of the gamut warning. So that is the few ways in the full version of Photoshop that you can work with gamut to see where the problems are and to fix them. So I want to mention also for digital scrapbooking designers that if you're using a lot of overlays or blending modes, which is what I think happened with this element that I have here. Let's go ahead and observe it. You view the gamut warning and you're going to see some pink all over this element. Of course, I can desaturate it and get rid of most of that. You just don't want it all over. You don't want it to be pink like this. See, if I highly saturate that and take off the gamut warning, that is not good. But if you just play with the saturation just enough so it isn't going to be, it can still be bright, because we are people who love images and love that wow, and it's okay to have a little eye candy on your screen while you're playing, so it's pleasurable while you're making your layouts, and have a little bit of that in there. But to have a lot of it, even like this, is probably too much. To have a lot of it is not very good, but to have a low amount probably is not so bad. But I do want to mention, as I started to say, that using overlays and blending modes can really change the color and get it out of gamut. So it's almost best sometimes to be designing with if you're designing in Photoshop, to design with that gamut mode on. And so I am going to move to Photoshop Elements now. This happens to be Photoshop Elements 10, and I want to show you first, as I did with Photoshop, if you click on Edit and then Color Settings, this is also here. And you can, I think the default is always optimize colors for computer screen, but I'm going to suggest that you always optimize for printing. You could do no color management, but as we discussed in Photoshop, it's probably best to go ahead and work in your RGB mode and then convert it later. Photoshop Elements, if you're really getting into professional digital scrapbooking designing, is not meant for professional work, but you can do it. I want to go ahead and I'm just going to open up this image because this one takes longer to process in one of the methods I'm going to show you. We're going to open up this image, which is that second one, which is really bright. And I want to share with you a few things. Let's see, the color picker If I click around out in here, you're going to see that the warning for color or web safe color is available, but there is no warning in here for the gamut. It is the Photoshop feels that if you're going to be doing this for a professional business, that you should get the professional software. That being out of gamut is not for something for the general non-professional to be concerned about, and really it isn't. The colors get converted in your printer, and the general public really has not much knowledge, including myself recently, about gamut. So there is no way to find in here a gamut warning at all. But if you are designing in here and cannot afford the full version, there's a few things that you can do. Go ahead and make your design, and when you're done, click edit and convert color profile, and then just remove the color profile. And as you're going to see, it changed it a little bit, I think. Did we remove it? Remove color profile. That's right. And now let's go ahead and try this and click Save As, and we're going to click Remove Color as our title. I did a Save As, and let's just test this, and I'm going to bring this open, the one that says Remove Color, into the full version of Photoshop. You can see it's a lot duller, not as bright, and View Gamut, and there are no gamut warnings. So you can go ahead and design in your full version, but with the setting for optimize for printers, but then right before you save, you can remove the color profile, and that of course is going to affect the whole image. You're not going to be able to choose one thing over another. I want to show you, let's open up this other one. See, I've done a lot of playing. So we have this one with the two images in it, and if I go in here and I remove the color profile and I do a file, save as, remove color, on this one, and then go ahead and in Photoshop, we're doing the same thing once again. Here's the one with the remove color. There is no gamut warnings, but as you can see, even though this one was edited, it is still much better than this one. That is the point I'm trying to get across. Go ahead and make it that wow layout. That's something that's very pleasing to your eye before you convert it and remove the color profile in Photoshop Elements, because there is going to remain that difference that you were seeing when you were in RGB mode. There is no such thing, we'll go back to Photoshop Elements, as CMYK in Photoshop Elements. If you go to back to where we were at, that mode, you're going to see there's an RGB index color grayscale bitmap. There is no option for the CMYK. That's because CMYK is a professional thing, as I was explaining a bit ago. It's just not an option that Adobe gives Photoshop Elements, because Photoshop Elements is not meant for professionals. There is one more way, and I might suggest that this is a better way in Photoshop Elements. to convert this so that it is in gamut, and that is actually to use Save for Web. So if you use Save for Web, and I was a bit concerned, let's turn this to JPEGs. I was a bit concerned about using Save for Web because Save for Web is supposed to reduce the file size, reduce the quality, making it a better image for using on the web. We're in not responding mode here. There it went out of it. It's supposed to make the file size smaller, and that's the whole purpose of it. But if you go in here and you make sure this quality slider is all the way up and click OK, and we're going to save this as Save for Web so we know which one it is. So we can go back into our folder and compare. Basically what it does when you do Save for Web is it takes out the color profile, which is the same thing as you were doing right here. But it leaves the original in this original format. If you're going to go and do this and then save it, you might want to hit undo to go back to where it was, to save your PSD file in case you need to edit that again. But we go back in here, and here's our Save for Web. Let's go into Photoshop so I can show you. Open this up, and this image is in gamut. And so I want to also review, if you just do the remove for color, the file size is 10.2, and if you do the Save for Web, the file size is 10.2. As long as you have that 100% slider all the way up, it gives you basically the same results, the same size image as doing the Save As. So basically that's the only way I have found in Photoshop Elements, if you are a designer, to ensure that everything is in gamut. As I said, it wipes out everything as far as any gamut problems. You cannot do as you can in Photoshop Elements, and as you can in Photoshop with the warning, and play around a little bit more, trying to get rid of the gamut and leaving a little bit of the problem, like you can here, or using seeing the gamut warning and using the sponge tool to fix the gamut in maybe just one area of the photo. So but it does fix it, and it's a difficult thing, I know, because with digital scrapbooking designers, a lot of them like those bright colors. I personally don't like scrapping with the bright colors because it makes it very hard for my photos to be the focal point. But I've seen some digital scrapbooking layout makers who are fabulous and have great talent in using those bright colors and keeping their photos as the focal point. Just not me. I'm not skilled at that. So I tend to go for the more muted colors in kits anyway. But for those that like the bright colors, this is a little bit more difficult for you. I realize, and you're going to have to make some decisions and choices and decide whether or not you think that gamut is important to you. I feel that gamut's important to me because I want my images to and my layouts to print the same as they are on the screen. I want to be able to give these to my children and have them print the same and not wonder. So anyway, this is your lesson on gamut and why I feel it's important. I'm going to encourage any designers in my store to make sure most of their things are in gamut, and I want our customers, just like sizing, I want the images, the elements to be at a realistic size, so that when somebody who's new to digital scrapbooking brings an element in to the layout, it automatically works and automatically feels good. I've seen too many new digital scrapbookers put those big buttons on their page and not resize them down because they don't know any different. And so you want them to have success. That's the point. You want your customers to have success easily and not be wondering why it's not working. They don't have to really know about Gamut. They just have to know it works. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the forum, and we'll see you around the internet.